Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, agents. I'm Matty Carl, and this is Confessions of a Sega Dreamcast Game Tester, Part 2. If you listened to my Part 1, I had a couple of really great stories for you, and it's going to keep on continuing because today's stories are extra juicy, and part of the reason why it is attributed to the Dreamcast downfall. And this story isn't going to be contributing to the Dreamcast downfall. It's just one of those things that game magazines and stuff, they make up to kind of be like, oh, this is the downfall, this is why it failed, rampant piracy. And this story is about piracy and just kind of way it happens and stuff like that. So one day I was coming into work and I noticed that as soon as I got there that there was a couple of things that were out of place and I couldn't put a finger on it, so I just went about doing my work. I was one of the first people to actually come into work, and I was always very early, and I wanted to get there early so that I could get a jump on things, and actually because I love my job, and there was nothing that I wanted more than to be there, first one in the door, and get in there and start working on whatever it was I was working on. I probably was working on Tomb Raider Legends at this time, but so this story is going to take a turn really quickly because it involves a lot of moving pieces. So hang with me, and we're gonna get to the part. And so I'm here, and it hits 9 o'clock, and the rest of the crew is coming in, and one of the gentlemen who was actually the gentleman who was fired in the last part 1 video that I told you about, his name escapes me right now because I forgot what I called him in the first one, but I'm not going to go ahead and call him anything in this one. But oh yes, it was Vinny. I do remember that I went ahead and did that. But anyways, so Vinny comes into work, and he's kind of perplexed because things aren't really working at his cubicle. And so he comes over and he says, "Hey man, my Dreamcast is not working." And this is strange because there is a game inside that I do not know where it came from. And inside was a silver disc, and on it somebody had written Street Fighter Alpha 2. And this game had not been released on the Dreamcast yet at this point. And so we were a little perplexed that maybe somebody came in and tested it out on his machine or something like that. But it didn't make up for the fact that his Dreamcast wasn't working. And so I had to go to the lead and basically explain this and say, hey, this is going on. And I went to the QA manager and I said, hey, we got a problem. There's something going on and we need to figure it out. And so basically everybody was told to sit down, and a couple people throughout the day, up until lunch, were being called out of their desk to kind of be questioned. And I was one of them. And the QA manager brings me in and he starts talking to me about, what was going on, what did I see, because I was the first one in, and so they obviously know it because I was the first one to keycard in. And so I was in there and I said, well, here's what happened, and this is what I saw when I first came in. There was nobody there. I was the first person in. And so what happened was he basically said, well, who do you think it is? And I said, well, I'm not sure, but these are the people that have access to the burners. These are the people that would have access to something like this. And then we came up with the idea, okay, well, the Dreamcast was working yesterday, and so maybe there's something wrong with the Dreamcast that we can figure out and track to who it is. And what happened was we went through, because we tracked all the serial numbers for each of the independent Dreamcasts, and we tracked it down, and the number that we had established and given to this in particular tester, and it turns out that the serial number on the bottom of the Dreamcast was not the same as the one that was issued to him. And so this brought up the fact that maybe whoever did this still had stuff in the building. And what happened was, so we ended up being pulled into a room and they searched everybody's stuff. And this is probably illegal. I mean, there was probably an illegal search going on at some point during this time. So we're in this room, and next thing we know is I get pulled out and a couple other people get pulled out, and we get brought into the room, and we're basically informed that they have found something, and it's not attributed to any of us, but we need to go ahead and talk about what we saw. So we're, it's basically me and a couple other leads and stuff like that. And so we're brought into this room and we're told, okay, we found something. We found a backpack and it had games in it, pirated copies of games, and they wouldn't tell us who it was that they found them in. And so we kind of had to just kind of guess. And so we go through this, and I said, well, I saw this, and it was kind of mysterious that that happened. And what happened is my tip basically led them to finding another bag, and inside this bag was a Dreamcast. And sure enough, the Dreamcast that was in this bag matched the serial number that was issued to Vinny the game tester. And basically this person sat across from me and I had no idea what was going on. And so we had to, basically lock everything down, and this one person was brought in and he was told, hey, this is what we found in your bag, and you need to explain yourself. And he had he denied it. He said, no, that's not my stuff, that's definitely not mine, and there was nothing that he could do about it because he was caught red-handed. But he lied until the very end. Even to this day, I've run into him and he says 100% no, it wasn't him. And it might be because what happened next was anybody that came from the area that he was friends with, that he was hired with, was brought in and talked to about this in particular issue. And it was mostly because the people that he was issued with were also really big Street Fighter fans. And so what happened is this is after lunch. It's probably about 1 o'clock. And so a couple people were taken out and brought into this one room. And and next thing I know is I'm getting a call on my cell phone from one of the individuals that was taken. And he basically says, and he's screaming profanities because he's super pissed because he had nothing to do with it. And the way, even to this day, we talk about it. I'm still really good friends with him. And I know for 100% fact that, yeah, he was fired, but he was really fired for being friends with this guy. And, there's not really anything you can really do about it. But, it's very sad that this happened and there was an association there, and it sucks. But he was basically walked out of the building and had no ability to get his stuff. And so he called me and said, hey, can you get me my stuff and bring it down? And so I asked and I said, hey, can I do this? And I was told no. And so there was nothing I could do. And it really sucked. Even to this day, this whole situation was bad because basically what happened is that everything was locked down from 9 until like 6 o'clock, and you couldn't stay unless you were doing overtime. And a lot of the times that we were doing this, we were playing Counter-Strike, and Counter-Strike was in beta 5.8, and Counter-Strike was awesome. And so we would stay after work until like 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning playing Counter-Strike all night long. And it was super awesome, but this one incident ruined it all. And what happened is this is what brought to light the rampant piracy that was within the Dreamcast, because when they found the packet of discs that were in this gentleman's backpack, they found a Utopia Disc. And this is what helped them to crack and figure out that the Utopia Disc existed and was out there, because he basically said that they basically found that he had found it offline or something like that. They started doing searches online for it. And this was still early days of the internet, so it wasn't really easy. They basically found an ISO or whatever it was that was able to be downloaded onto a disc, and you could actually play it, and it would basically upload games. And what they found was that all of the games in this gentleman's backpack were all pirated versions of Japanese games that hadn't been released in the United States yet. And so while it wasn't that big of an issue, it was because it was a piracy issue, and one of the biggest things that the Dreamcast had was a piracy issue. And so if you know anything about the downfall of Dreamcast, a lot of game reporters will say that it's partly because of the rampant piracy due to the Utopia Disc. And so that's one of the issues that we had, and it ended up being resolved. And I probably make it sound a lot more lackluster than what it was, but I mean, we were in a room, we were being interrogated. It felt like, there was an investigation going on. People were looking through other people's stuff. People were snitching on people. It was crazy. And it basically set up a lot of what we went through from the time that we worked there. So that's really all I got for you today. I'm going to go ahead and talk about a couple other things that we kind of went through during our time, and I'm going to go ahead and move on to those stories. This wasn't really one of those more exciting, funny stories, but there's a couple of pranks that we did that are going to be hilarious. I'm going to do a part 3 in that and go ahead and talk about this guy named I'll call him Joey or something like that, but he had really bad psoriasis, and it was hilarious, some of the stuff that we did. I'll just give you a little tidbit. So this guy, he had really bad psoriasis on his head, and he always wore this Thundercat beanie. And one of the guys that we have in our office, everybody knew about this the psoriasis of this guy's head because he had this hairbrush and he was always combing his hair, and he had this Thundercat beanie. And so one day I took the Thundercat beanie, and I don't remember what this guy did to me, but I had to get him back for something that he did. And so I took the Thundercat beanie, and while he's sitting there playing a game, I basically come up to him and I bag his head. I just pull the beanie down over his face, and he has no idea what he's flailing and going off, and he has no idea what's going on. And I finally take it off of his head, and he turns around and he looks at me like, what the hell is going on? And I show him exactly what was on his head, and he starts heaving like he's gonna throw up. And I'm just like, he realized that this dude's psoriasis helmet has been on his head, and all of the dandruff flakes and all the skin flakes have gotten ingrained in his hair. And it's just, he goes out and he runs to the bathroom immediately. He starts washing his hair, and he immediately he's throwing up in the bathroom. That's how bad it was. He thought it was that bad that he starts throwing up in the bathroom and heaving. And the next day he comes in, his head is completely shaved. I mean, this was I couldn't have planned a better prank than this one here, and it was just one of those things. There's a little bonus story for you. So anyways, thank you so much for listening. If you found some of these stories amusing, or one of these stories to be absolutely depressing because 2 people got fired over pirated games, then go ahead and drop a like on this. Consider subscribing to us. We got lots of different content, mostly The Division, but we're trying to wait it out so that we can go ahead and bring you some more stuff. I got this Battlefield 1 video going on in the background, and I'm going to be bringing you some Destiny stuff as I make my way through Rise of Iron. And Division will still come back in 1.4, and we'll get things going from there. So anyways, for all of us here at Mountie Carl and The Division and Mountie Squad, for all of us here, I'm Mountie Carl, and we'll see you in the next video. Mountie out.